Picture two versions of yourself. One retires at 62, the other retires at 65. Same job, same salary, same savings account, same $340,000 sitting in a 401k the day both of them stop working. Run the math forward 25 years, and the version of you who waited 3 extra years retires with roughly $210,000 more in the bank and a Social Security check that's about $650 bigger every single month for the rest of your life. 3 years, that's the entire gap. 3 years of decisions can be the difference between a retirement where you travel twice a year and one where you're recalculating your grocery budget in October because the furnace just died. This isn't a video about whether you should work longer. Nobody's telling you to grind through a job you hate just to pad a spreadsheet. This is about something almost nobody actually sits down and calculates before they hand in their notice: what 3 early years really cost in real dollars and where those dollars quietly disappear. Because retiring early doesn't just mean 3 fewer years of income, it means 3 fewer years of growth, 3 fewer years of Social Security credits stacking up, and this is the part almost nobody prices out: 3 extra years you have to cover your own healthcare before Medicare kicks in. Stack those 3 forces on top of each other, and a retirement that looked comfortable at 62 can turn into a retirement that runs dry at 81. Let's go through exactly how that happens, $1 at a time. There are 3 places this money vanishes: your investment compounding, your Social Security benefit, and your healthcare bill. Let's start with the one most people assume they understand, and mostly don't. Here's the thing about compounding that spreadsheets show you, but your gut never quite believes. The money you don't touch does more work than the money you do. Say you've got $340,000 in a retirement account at 62, and you're trying to decide between drawing it down now or leaving it invested for 3 more years while you keep working. At a conservative 6% average annual return, that account doesn't grow by a neat $20,400 a year. It compounds. Year 1, it grows to $360,400. Year 2, growing off that new bigger base, it hits $382,024. Year 3, it lands around $405,000. That's not $340,000 plus 3 years of interest. That's $65,000 of growth, and more than $6,000 of that growth is interest earned on interest you hadn't even touched yet. Retire 3 years early and pull from that account instead of adding to it, and you don't just lose the $65,000 of growth, you lose the base it would have grown from for every year after that, for the rest of your life. Financial planners who model this call it the reversal problem. And industry surveys of retirement plan clients suggest the average early retiree underestimates the compounding gap by close to 40% because they mentally model 3 years as 3 years of missed contributions instead of 3 years of a shrinking account instead of a growing one. Those are 2 completely different math problems. A growing account earns interest on an expanding balance. A shrinking account, one you're pulling 4% out of every year to live on, earns interest on a balance that's actively getting smaller at the exact same time market downturns hit hardest. That's called sequence of returns risk, and it's the reason 2 people with identical starting balances can end up with wildly different outcomes, depending on nothing more than which 3 years they chose to stop earning and start withdrawing. Retire into a down market at 62 instead of a recovering market at 65, and the damage compounds in the wrong direction. You're selling shares low to cover expenses, which means fewer shares left to ride the recovery. Some retirement modeling puts the total lifetime cost of an ill-timed early retirement, purely from this sequencing effect, at 15% to 20% of total portfolio value over a 25-year retirement. On that $340,000 account, that's not a rounding error. That's $51,000 to $68,000 gone, not because the market did anything unusual, but because of which 3 years you happen to pick. Feel that in your stomach for a second, because it's the piece most people skip past too fast. A portfolio isn't a static number sitting in an account waiting patiently for you. It's a living thing that behaves completely differently depending on whether money is flowing in or flowing out. While you're still working, every downturn is actually a gift. You're buying shares at a discount with your regular contributions, and when the market recovers, you own more of it than you did before. The moment you retire and start withdrawing instead, that same downturn becomes a wound, because now you're selling shares at the discount instead of buying them, And every share you sell during a dip is a share that never gets to participate in the recovery. 3 extra years of paychecks means 3 extra years of buying on the way down instead of selling on the way down. And that single switch in direction is worth more to your long-term balance than almost any other decision you'll make in your 60s. But compounding isn't even the biggest number on this list. There's a second mechanism, one baked directly into the Social Security formula, and it punishes early retirement even if you never touch a single dollar of your 401k. Social Security doesn't just pay you based on how long you worked, it pays you based on your highest 35 years of earnings, adjusted for wage growth, and it applies a permanent reduction for every month you claim before your full retirement age. Most people born after 1960 have a full retirement age of 67. Claim at 62 instead, and you lock in a reduction of roughly 30% permanently for the rest of your life with no do-over. That's the headline number most people already know. What almost nobody calculates is the second layer underneath it. If you stop working at 62, those 3 years between 62 and 65 don't just fail to add new high-earning years to your 35-year average. For a lot of workers in their peak earning window, those are the highest earning years of the entire record, the ones that would have bumped out 3 of your lowest earning years from decades earlier. Run an actual case. Say you're earning $78,000 a year at 62, and buried in your earnings history from your 20s are 3 years where you earned $19,000, $22,000, and $24,000 while you were finishing school or raising young kids. Keep working 3 more years at $78,000, and each of those 3 low years gets replaced in the formula by a high year, pushing your average indexed monthly earnings up by roughly $340 a month. Layer that on top of the 30% versus full benefit difference from claiming at 62 instead of 65, and the Social Security Administration's own benefit calculators show combined monthly differences in the $600 to $700 range are common for workers with mid-career earnings histories like this one. Multiply a $650 monthly gap by a 20-year retirement, a reasonable life expectancy for someone claiming in their 60s today, and you're looking at $156,000 in Social Security income that simply never shows up in your bank account. Not because you did anything wrong, because the formula rewards your highest earning years, and you retired before 3 of your best years ever got the chance to count. There's a detail buried in the Social Security actuarial tables that catches people off guard. The break-even age for claiming at 62 versus 65 sits around 78 to 80 for most earners, meaning if you live past your late 70s, which the average American man now does and the average American woman does by a wider margin, waiting turns out to be the mathematically better bet in the vast majority of cases. Insurance actuaries build entire pricing models around exactly this fact. You're not betting against the house here. You're betting against your own life expectancy, and the house, meaning the actuarial tables, usually wins that bet in favor of waiting. There's also a spousal wrinkle that almost never comes up in casual conversation about early retirement, and it can matter even more than your own individual benefit. If you're married, your Social Security decision doesn't just set your own check, it sets the survivor benefit your spouse could eventually inherit if you pass away first. Claim early at 62 and lock in that roughly 30% reduction, and you've also locked in a smaller survivor benefit for the person who may end up depending on it for a decade or more after you're gone. Wait those 3 extra years, and you're not just protecting your own monthly number, you're protecting the floor under your spouse's income for whatever years they outlive you. Financial advisors who specialize in retirement income often call this the most overlooked decision in the entire process because it doesn't show up until it's the only income left in the house. And now the third mechanism, the one that blindsides more early retirees than anything else on this list, because it doesn't show up as a monthly number. It shows up as a single invoice. Medicare eligibility starts at 65, not 62, not 63, not whenever you feel ready to retire. 65, full stop, with narrow exceptions for disability. Retire at 62, and you've got a 3-year gap to cover with either COBRA continuation coverage, a marketplace plan, or your spouse's employer plan if you're lucky enough to have one. Industry data on individual marketplace premiums for a 62-year-old couple without employer subsidies puts a realistic combined monthly premium, plus out-of-pocket costs for prescriptions, dental, and the deductible you'll almost certainly hit at least once in 3 years, somewhere between $1,800 and $2,400 a month. That's $21,600 to $28,800 a year before a single serious health event. Multiply that by 3 years, and you're at $65,000 to $86,000 just to keep the lights on, medically until Medicare takes over. Here's the number almost nobody runs, though. What happens if something actually goes wrong in that gap? A single hospitalization for something like a cardiac event or a hip replacement, even with a marketplace plan's out-of-pocket maximum in place, commonly runs $9,000 to $14,000 in patient responsibility once you count the deductible, coinsurance, and the out-of-network specialist nobody warned you about. Health researchers tracking early retirees consistently find that people who retire before 65 report meaningfully higher out-of-pocket medical spending in their first 3 post-retirement years than people who wait for Medicare. One widely cited estimate puts the gap at close to 60% higher average spending, driven almost entirely by the fact that marketplace plans, even good ones, carry higher deductibles and narrower networks than Medicare paired with a supplement. Add a single bad health event to the base premium cost, and that 3-year healthcare gap alone can run past $95,000 for a couple. That's before you've touched the compounding loss or the Social Security shortfall. That's just the medical bill for staying alive and insured until your Medicare card arrives. There's one more wrinkle worth naming here, because it changes how the healthcare gap actually feels month to month rather than just on paper. Marketplace premiums for people in their early 60s are already priced higher than any other age bracket outside of Medicare itself, since insurers price by age band, and 60-somethings sit right at the top of that curve before Medicare absorbs the risk. That means the exact 3 years you're trying to bridge are, dollar for dollar, the single most expensive 3 years of health insurance you will ever buy in your life. More expensive per month than insuring a 45-year-old, more expensive than insuring a 55-year-old, because you're paying peak age premiums without the government backstop that arrives the moment you turn 65. Retire at 62 and you're not just paying for 3 years of coverage. You're paying for 3 years of the most expensive coverage on the entire market at the exact moment your income has stopped. Add the 3 numbers together and look at what 3 years actually costs a typical worker with a $340,000 retirement account and a $78,000 salary. Somewhere around $65,000 in lost compounding and sequencing risk, $150,000 plus in lost Social Security income over a normal retirement, and $65,000 to $95,000 in healthcare gap costs before Medicare eligibility. Add those up and you're looking at a total cost, over the full arc of retirement, somewhere in the range of $280,000 to $340,000. 3 years of an early decision can cost close to the entire original balance of the account you were trying to protect by retiring early in the first place. That's the part that should stop you before you sign anything. Early retirement isn't free just because your last paycheck already cleared. The bill doesn't arrive all at once, so it never feels like a bill. It arrives as a smaller compounding base at 63, a smaller Social Security deposit at 70, and a stack of medical invoices at 64 that you didn't budget for because you assumed insurance was insurance. None of those 3 things individually look catastrophic. Together, they can turn a comfortable plan into a decade of tight math you didn't see coming. So before you pick a retirement date, run all 3 numbers yourself in this order. First, project your account balance with and without 3 more years of growth, using a realistic return assumption, not an optimistic one. Second, pull your actual Social Security earnings record, you can get it in minutes, and see whether your current highest earning years are still ahead of you or already behind you. Third, price out an actual marketplace healthcare quote for your age and zip code, not a guess, and multiply it by the real number of months between your target retirement date and your 65th birthday. 3 numbers, 10 minutes of work, and you'll know exactly what those 3 years are worth before you hand anyone your resignation letter. If this changed how you're thinking about your retirement date, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown.